Welcome to today's edition of Daily Dose of Hebrew. We are in 1 Samuel 3:9 today, so let's read the Hebrew together here as we begin. Vayomer Eli lishmuel lech shechav vehaya im yekra elecha ve'amarta daber Adonai ki shomea avdecha vayelech Shemuel vayishkav Bimkomo. So before we jump into the details here of the parsing and translation, let's get an overall translation so that we can see what we're working with. And so we get here at the beginning, and then Eli said to Samuel, "Go, lie down. And it shall be, if he calls to you, then you shall say, Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening," or is a listener. And so Samuel went, and he laid down in his place. So 1 Samuel 3:9 here begins with the Vav consecutive, a call imperfect 3ms of Amar with Eli as the subject here. And Eli said is what we get in the first clause. The Lamed marks the one to whom Eli is speaking, namely Samuel. And Eli said to Samuel. We saw in the last verse that Eli now perceived that the Lord was speaking, and Eli is here introducing his plan for what Samuel should do if he hears the one calling to him again. So Eli is perceiving something and now giving Samuel instructions. But before disclosing his plan, Eli tells Samuel to go, lech, and lie down, shechav. Both of the verbs here are call imperatives to ms. Shechav is a strong verb and follows the call pattern pretty well morphologically, but lech is from the root halach, he, lamed, kaf. And remember that halach functions morphologically as if a vav was in the first root position, what we sometimes call an R1 vav verb. In these cases, the first root letter disappears in an imperative, and so we're left with lech as we have it here. For future reference, too, many R1 noon weak verbs also do the same thing with the imperative. If we see those, something like Natan will do the same thing. The next verbal is vehaya here, and it is a call perfect 3ms, and the subject is a hypothetical, introducing the conditional clause with im. Hence, we would translate it, and it shall be that if he calls to you. The Vav consecutive on the perfect in vehaya makes the typical perfect past tense translation a future. Hence, we would say, and it shall be. To some extent, we can leave haya out of the translation, actually, and I believe that this is what the ESV does, but nonetheless, this is how it would fit into the Hebrew reading. Im, right here, introduces the conditional. If he calls to you. Yikra is the call imperfect 3ms of the root kara, meaning to call. And the imperfect is appropriate here, not for future tense necessarily, but for incomplete action. The calling hasn't yet happened in a conditional clause, and so the incomplete action of the imperfect aspect is fitting here. Ve'amarta is a call perfect 2ms of amar plus the vav consecutive. And again, the vav on the perfect makes it a future or incomplete action rather than the typical past tense of the perfect. Hence, we would say, then you shall say. In some sense, Amarta here simply introduces what Samuel is to say if the Lord calls to him again. Samuel is to say, Daber Adonai, speak, Lord. Daber is a PL imperative 2ms. Notice the short vowel in the R1 position and then the Dagesh forte in the second root letter position. These are the distinguishing marks of a PL imperative, so notice those. We shouldn't make too much here of the PL as an intensive stem, since the base stem of davar is the PL in this case. Ki, right here, introduces the reason for why the Lord should speak. Speak, Lord, for, there's key, for your servant, which is the subject. Eved here has the 2ms pronominal suffix on it, your servant, is a listener, or we might say your servant is listening. Shomea is a call participle. It's masculine singular. Notice that the ayin gets this furtive patach at the end of it. In non-finite, hold on to this, in non-finite R3 guttural verbs. So non-finite verbs, participles and infinitives, with a guttural in the R3 position, the guttural will want to get that long A sound, as in father. And so we get here the furtive patach for the vocalic glide, and we get shomeya, aya. You get that vocalic glide into the ah sound of the guttural. Now, after the athnach, we get the call imperfect 3ms of halach. The vav consecutive here is likely a logical succession, and so Samuel went. It's not temporal succession here, and then it could be, but the logical conclusion of Eli's instructions seem better, and so Samuel went. Samuel is the explicit subject as he responds to Eli's plan. Vayishkav is a call imperfect 3ms of the root shakav, and the vav consecutive carries the action of the narrative forward, somewhat echoing Eli's commands earlier. Lech shekav, we now get vayelech vayishkav. And so Samuel went, and he laid down. Finally, bimkomo is a locative prepositional phrase telling us where Samuel laid down, namely in his place. Now, that's not a super specific location, but alas, that's the function of the prepositional phrase here. So once more, the whole translation is, and then Eli said to Samuel, go, lie down, and it shall be, if he calls to you, that you shall say, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. And so Samuel went, and he laid down in his place. So that wraps it up for today. I hope that these videos are helpful. Let us know if you have questions, and until next time, shalom.